That Sober Guy podcast contains adult content, merciless truth, and emotional nudity. Listener discretion is advised.
Yo, what's up? Thank you for tuning in today. Today's guest is David Rachford, and David's a good friend. He's a good dude. He's really taught me a lot about service and about being of service to others. And he's going to talk a little bit about that and share some of his insight on why he is the way that he is with that, and why he kind of approaches life from that angle. And I kind of had told him, hey, look, man. I don't know if you know this, but we talked about this in the interview. I don't know if he knew this at the time, but he'd kind of inspired me and opened my eyes up to that, that mentality of really doing for others and being there for others and genuinely caring, not just to do it either, just to get something out of it or say you did it or tell somebody you did a good deed or whatever. He kind of approaches everything like that. David's the creator and he's the host of the Better Human Challenge. And the Better Human Challenge is a podcast on personal development and challenging you to become your best self. So at the age of 40, David found himself overweight, abusing alcohol, and not really living in alignment with the values and the health and the fitness that he wanted to live by. And he kind of found himself complacent. He wasn't enjoying nature and beauty. He wasn't challenging himself to grow. These are the things that were important to him. And he kind of had to take a step back and identify his values. And he decided to, and that's an important word, decided, made a decision there to turn his life around and to live in alignment, to be congruent with his true self. He quit drinking. He found sobriety, and for the second time. And we talk a little bit about this in the podcast. He had been sober for 5 years and went back to drinking again. And as recently decided to kick that once again and get on the right track. But he increased his health, started eating better, dropped 50 pounds, and now through the platform teaches other folks to follow a similar path. And, and you can find that at davidrachford.com. He also does yoga. He's a yoga instructor, and he talks a little bit about that in there and how that's helped him grow and help to hold him accountable to show up there because he's being of service for others. He's teaching other people how to do yoga, creating relationships that way. Also, at the end of this episode, David shares a story about a guy named Kevin that he used to be in the service with. And the story there is titled, I Think I Hit Bottom. And make sure that you stick around till the end of this episode so you can hear that. You're going to find out what freeloading and all-you-can-eat mountain mics, living with your mother as an adult, and shitting your pants in elastic bottom sweatpants all have in common. It's probably one of the funniest stories I've heard, so make sure you check that out at the end. First, a word from our sponsor.
At Foundations Recovery Network, our mission is to create lifetime relationships for long-term recovery. In our history of doing good is the promise of your future getting better. So if you or someone you love needs help, please know we are here to help. And the sign on our door says, "We care." We create an individualized treatment plan for the whole person, for the whole you, because to us, you matter. The first step to recovery is heroic. We know that. And with our Heroes in Recovery movement, we honor those who have taken that step toward recovery and stand up for you and stand beside you and stand together to break the stigma placed on addiction. Call our confidential and private line at 877-714-1318. We are here to help you, and help has a phone number, 877-714-1318. Make the call. We're listening. We're Foundations Recovery Network.
Thanks to Foundations for supporting the show. Go to thatsoberguy.com. You can check out all of the content on there. We have past podcast episodes. You can donate to the show. You can send us a message on there through the contact button. Also, you can sign up for the private Facebook group, Sober Guy, Sober Girl. It's an awesome group supporting people all over the world. Bunch of great people in there. And one of the questions I asked, you may have heard on the show in the Heart and Hustle round, is where's the weirdest place you ever thrown up? And so I had this idea that maybe I would post that in the group. And I did that, and we got some responses on there, so I wanted to read some of those. Where's the weirdest place you've ever thrown up? Nick says, on my barbecue, seriously. John, at the bottom of the basement steps in my own vomit. That sounds disgusting, a face full of puke. Stephanie, in a hearse. Hope there was not a dead body. Actually, I do hope there was a dead body back there. That would even be better. Just puked right in the hearse on the casket. I don't know. I have a sick brain sometimes. What is wrong with me, folks? I don't know. Bill says, in a flower bed outside a resort in Cancun, and he had to add in there with my shoes off. So I'm wondering, I see. The shoes were off when you woke up, so you probably had no clue where the hell your shoes were at. And back to Nick's real quick. On my barbecue, seriously, Nick, I hope the barbecue was not hot. That would not be very comfortable. And then let's see, we got two more. This one's from Ellis. An old school satellite dish. What does an old school satellite dish look like? I'm trying to picture that. At a house down the street from my mom's. And at the time I lived 30 miles away from my mom. So waking up on a satellite dish, that's pretty odd. I like that one. Last one comes from Michael. It says the hallway of an apartment building in Brooklyn. I didn't know anyone who lived in that building or any building close to there. So just completely lost. Pretty comedy, man. Thanks for sharing those, guys. I know that we've all had those instances where we woke up and just said, where the hell are we right now? What am I doing? How did I get here? I can't really think of one in particular right now. I'm trying to rack my brain and see if I have one that's coming to mind. I don't know if I have a weird place. I mean, I guess in a pile of dirt camping, that would be the first one that sticks out, just on some sticks and some dirt with drool and just that nasty stank breath, hungover, stale booze, probably on my bachelor party. Not fun. Definitely do not miss those days. All right, so we're going to get to David here in just a moment. Let's do the iTunes review of the week. I'm going to bring this up here. And this one comes from Steam Train. Says this podcast it's titled Shane is the Real Deal. It's 5 stars. Says this podcast is a huge help keeping me and others I'm sure on the right path. Shane shares his experiences with the down-to-earth, we can do this together personality. Thank you, man. That's pretty awesome to read right there and hear. His sincerity shines throughout. He communicates with his people, our people, one-on-one. The guests are awesome, and listening is a huge part of my strategy for staying sober. God bless him, and God bless this podcast. Damn, dude. Thank you so much from Steam Train 1963. Man, that really does mean a lot to me that you mentioned in there, we do this together. It's this is a community of folks. It's not just about me, speaking on the podcast, and not at all. And really means a lot to me. So thank you. You too can support the show by going on to iTunes and leaving us a review. And you can also support us by going to Patreon. You can do that on the website. There's a button at thatsoberguy.com. You can also go to patreon.com/soberguyradio and become a patron. You help support the show, help keep the content free for the Friday shows. And when you do that, you'll get access to the new show, Real, with the Jess and I, where we talk about, shit that married folks go through. So check that out. Now let's get to our guest today. Big shout out, big thanks to him for coming on, Mr. David Rachford. What's up? Thanks for tuning in today. Today we're talking with my good homie, David Rachford from davidrachford.com. David, what's up, man? Welcome to the show.
It's good to be here, Shane.
Yeah, thanks, man. We've been trying to put this thing together for a minute, and I'm glad that we finally are able to sit down and conversate a bit, talk a little bit about you, get to know you a bit and what you're up to. Take us back, man. Like, what was life like growing up for you, David?
Oh, this is funny. I was afraid you were going to start like at the early thing, and I've got a picture somewhere posted on my Facebook of me walking around at like 1 year old or maybe 2 years old with a Coors 6-pack box on my head. Um, and it's funny, like I remember just growing up, I mean, alcohol was always a part of my parents' life.
Yeah.
And I think as soon as my dad taught me how to fetch, he was working on the house, and my dad was a hardworking guy. And we lived in this old house that he basically rebuilt from the studs up. And my job was to keep him supplied with beer, and so I'd go fetch him a beer, and he would always give me the freshies, like the first sip off the beer. And that was
your reward for going to fetch it for him.
Right. Yeah. And so that was always a factor, and I just remember that's like one of my earliest memories is running out wherever he was, and he'd say like, go get me a beer. And I'd run back and get a beer, and I'd get the first sip.
And it was Coors?
Yeah, it was Coors or Coors Light when that came out, but I think it was generally Coors.
Yeah, the Rocky that's the Rocky Mountains, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, I got a buddy Scotty. He used to say, "Let's go drink some Coors and get some Hoors." Oh my God, dude, big time Coors drinker. But yeah, you cracked me up with the box on the head thing too, man. I for some reason I flashed back to like a Halloween party, and there was always those couple of guys that would walk around with the Bud Light or the Coors box on their head. But that's a little different when you're, 5, 6, 7 yeyears old, I guess, fetching Pop's beers.
Or two,
Or two at that, yeah, right? Man. So I know, and I don't want to jump ahead a little bit. Obviously, we know each other pretty well. And for those out there listening, David is really responsible for some of the great guests that come on Sober Guy Radio. He's really a master of connecting folks and an entrepreneur himself. And he's also been through some shit in his life. And like I'd kind of mentioned before, the peaks and the valleys of life. I know you would actually, I don't want to get too far ahead, but you would stop drinking at one point for about 5 years. Is that right?
Yeah. The story on that was when I turned 30, I was looking at my life, and I was like generally kind of unhappy. And I was looking around and saying, okay, all my friends are starting to like buy houses and get married and all this kind of stuff. That happens when you're 30. And I looked at my life and I said like, okay, so I got a good job. I was working as an accountant at a CPA firm, and I didn't have my shit together. I was like just drinking, partying, being, fun single guy.
Yeah.
And I think I was probably like listening to a Tony Robbins CD set or something like that. And I said, okay, so what's one of the things that's holding me back? And I said, well, obviously it was alcohol that was getting in the way, because I was drinking, a couple nights a week, or, probably the majority of nights. But I wasn't able to buy a house because I probably wasn't saving my money and spending it wisely.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, well, I'm going to quit drinking. And I said, okay, for how long? And, I think I had a friend that had decided to quit drinking for 100 days or whatever like that. And, and things turned around for him and we're getting pretty good. And I thought, well, I need to have a meaningful amount of time on that. And so I just said, let's make it 1,000 days. Yeah. And so that's a little over 3 years. And so I quit drinking. I think it was about probably New Year's of the year that I was about to turn 30. And I listed a bunch of goals down on my, like on my New Year's goal kind of resolution or whatever. And I said, okay, I wanted to buy a house. So, and I wasn't too far off, but it means I needed to save some money and start looking to buy a house and get qualified and all that kind of stuff. And, so I said, I'm going to buy a house by, March 15th. And, and I quit drinking on the 1st of, the new year. And so the funny thing was I ended up buying the house or my condo I think I closed on March 31st. So like, yeah, I didn't make the goal, but I missed it by like 15 days. And I kind of took that as a sign of the universe. It was saying like, hey, you are now on track to start getting your goals together and start making things happen, And then of course, the funny thing is So I was working as an accountant CPA, and by the time April 15th came around, it's not uncommon for CPA firms to, kind of hand out the pink slips right after tax season. And of course I got one, and I was like, well, I'm not drinking. And so I ended up starting a business and being fairly successful at that over the next few years. But I think if I was drinking during that time, it certainly would have been a time to just go down the tubes. But it helped me get my shit together. And so that lasted for 5 years.
Yeah, because we have like, or at least for me, when I was drinking, I had these dreams, these goals, these thoughts, like I'm going to do this or I'm going to do that. But there was never any action behind it. There was never any accountability. And, we both have a mutual friend, Larry Hagner from the Good Dad Project. He's been on the show before, and him and I talked a little bit about the middle ground drinker, right? Like, where do you draw the line? Like, on a scale of 1 to 10, dude, am I like a 10, like, going to jail, falling down in the gutter, blackout, like getting in trouble, all that kind of stuff? Or am I down, below a 5, where I'm kind of like, I'm living a pretty much normal life, but I'm drinking on the weekends and maybe a night or two a week, and I can feel it starting to affect some things in my life. Like, that's like the tough, for that middle ground guy or gal out there that's kind of stuck in the middle of that. Like, where would you consider yourself, David, like back in the day when you were kind of starting and going through this, and how did you come to terms with that?
I was probably more of a middle ground guy, and probably at the point where I didn't see it affecting my job. Did it? Probably, yes. Did it affect my health? Yes. But it was one of those things where I was working out a lot, and so I would go to the gym every morning and hit the weights and the cardio for, a good hour and a half. Yeah. So it kind of, and so on the outward appearance was that I looked fit and healthy. And, I didn't have like a lot of weight around the middle section or anything like that. So it was probably, right around in that middle area.
Yeah. Yeah. That's, it's funny you said like the outer appearance, because with addiction, with alcoholism, with any kind of, mental or behavioral health, issue that maybe any one of us can have, the appearance on the outside is always so much different than actually what a lot of us are feeling on the inside. And so that can be a huge struggle too. So talk about after. So if we jump ahead, those 5 years, I know that ultimately there was a decision, or I don't really know the story behind it. Maybe you could share it. What ultimately led you back to drinking? Because you went back to drinking again. And I mean, that's one of the great things I think about having you on the show today, is that you're going to be able to give that, that perspective of what it was like to actually go back to it. We don't talk about that enough, I think.
Yeah. And okay. So here's an interesting thing, and I can't remember where I heard this, and it might've been on another show or in a book, on a sobriety related subject, where, approaching the idea of starting again, not as a relapse, but as research. And I liked kind of the non-judgmental way of looking at that and saying, because there's a difference between relapse being like a complete acute thing, and then also, just making a decision to, start it up again. And for me at the time, it was really a combination of I would call it a triple punch, a triple punch of life, where 3 things had happened within 6 months that really kind of set me off. So I had the first one being a divorce, and the second one being, let's see, well, there were 4. I had sold my business that I'd spent the 5 years building up. Oh, yeah. And then I went through a divorce. Then shortly after that, my mother died. or maybe before that, my back injury reoccurred. And so I had gotten out of the military due to some ruptured discs in my back, which put me, basically crippled and walking around with a cane and dependent on prescription narcotics. Oh, wow. So, like, when I went to college with a medical settlement and a huge bottle of prescription narcotics. And, for anyone who's ever been in pain and dealt with opiates, it doesn't you really have to kind of stay on top of it. And there's a point when the opiates don't do enough. And so that's why one of the reasons that alcohol abuse is so rampant is because, painkillers don't really work all that well. And then we go back to what we know, which is alcohol, and so, it's a combination of self-medicating and then, of course, being in college and on vacation and at a party school. And, so.
Well, yeah, we used to do that a lot. I mean, when you mix alcohol with Norco or Percocet or something, you can pop a couple of those and have some beers afterwards. And man, that's just, that'll take the pain away for sure. But the after effects of that, man, dude, the depression afterwards and the coming down off that is literally, it can be really, really shitty.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I kind of jumped over the college years there, but, but so I had these 3 events, and these are what we call life. Life happens.
But those are pretty serious things all at once too. I mean, God
just
threw them down on you and was like, "Here you
go." Yeah, and so when I had sold my business and the back injury came back, and going through the divorce and then my mom passing away, there were a couple of I would say there was a good year there where I just wasn't really looking at anything, and I self-medicated as much as I could. So when my back started to get better, which ironically was through physical therapy and yoga, then I was able to just drop the prescription narcotics, thankfully, and I didn't really have any withdrawal or anything like that. But the alcohol stayed for a while.
What? I forget you're the master of yoga as well, folks out there listening. You got to school my ass. I can't even fucking touch my toes and shit, man. and not that I'm terribly out of shape or anything. I'm in decent shape, but dude, my ladies tried to get me to do yoga, and I think we did a Pilates thing one time too, and I'm just like, dude, I'm so out. It's just not my thing. But I don't mean to get off track there. But
Pilates is a different animal. I've never done Pilates, but I'm sure that some of the moves are similar.
Well, so I think that's the interesting topic, though. So on the yoga tip, since I totally got us off track and we're talking about it anyways, how has that become a staple for you in connecting spiritually and kind of staying in that realm of peace in a sense?
Well, so for me, yoga became a practice that basically liberated me from pain. And from these little bits, so I'd been doing some reading. I've always been an avid reader, and it was yoga that led me to meditation. So I attended a big meditation retreat, because at the time I was realizing that, hey, things again are not working. I need to find some better tools and some skills that I need to have in my toolbox in order to cope with this thing called life, which is throwing pain and crap at me. And alcohol and narcotics are not working. So I began to look into meditation and yoga as a way to basically alleviate the suffering. And at the time I thought, and why not go to a yoga studio? There seem to be some attractive women, and now I'm single, and there aren't that many men there. So I kind of embraced it and started going to it. And the more I got into it, the more that it takes a subtle energy, and it's certainly not a panacea, a cure all. but it takes time because it's very subtle, but it does do some sort of work that allows you to work through pain, through, and what I mean by pain is like the suffering and shit that life throws at you.
Yeah.
You know,
It's great that you kind of found that alternative healthy way to release stuff, because we, when we're using, substances to do that, obviously that's a pretty unhealthy way to do it. And you found this thing, and, I think that's an important point too, what you said, like, it's not like you were a yoga expert. Like, you had to kind of suck at it at first to kind of jump in there and get after it. Right. And in the end, now, you teach classes on yoga. I mean, you're very schooled in that aspect. How has that kind of changed life for you?
It's completely changed life for me. And it's taken years to do that. But, if you were to look at me, say, probably 6 years ago, and even maybe probably 4 years ago now, I've dropped 50 pounds. I certainly can touch my toes.
I'd say, hey, I take that back. I can fucking touch my toes, all right?
Yeah, but you're sitting down. It's not that much. Your knees are bent. And because I teach now, most of my friends, my good friends, are now members of the yoga community, where, we're focused on health and positivity and helping people and healing people, and building a community around that. So I've certainly become more athletic. Like I said, I've dropped 50 pounds. Like, I know that things are going to pass, and I don't have to react in a negative way. But when something bad happens, I don't reach for the six pack, or I don't, I'm less reactive to the ups and downs of life.
So you said something there that sticks out to me too. And you said community, the community around it, in recovery, in life in general. I think community is such a big part of us growing, of us getting to know other people and learning. And when we're stuck in, in substance abuse, or, our past, when we're stuck in our past, maybe from our childhood, whatever the case is, like for me, I could tend to isolate, right? So even though I would consider myself somewhat of a people person, when I get in that realm, I can really isolate, and that's very dangerous for someone who is an addict. And man, one of the things that I've admired so much about you, since we've gotten to know each other, is your involvement in community, and how you not only build communities, but interact in communities. Can you talk a little bit about that and the importance of, whether it's a 12-step program, whether it's a challenge? You're a master at challenges. I know you like to create these challenges, and they're pretty badass, and they really help a lot of people set goals. Elaborate on that a little bit for me, man, and tell me what your kind of thoughts are on that.
Yeah, so I think that call it whether you want to call it addiction or, bad habits or whatever, they really thrive in isolation. And because we tend to be ashamed of them, it's not like, we're posting on Facebook, home alone last night, drunk as fuck. Yeah. I think I'm going to pass out with my shoes on the couch, watching, some bullshit documentary. Yeah. It's a behavior pattern that we certainly don't broadcast, and that we don't share, with people. And, going back, let's look at a couple of things here. So if at 2008 was, I think, when my mom died, and, I was drinking pretty heavily again by that time. And that went on for a couple of years. And so I drank myself into pre-diabetes, and 274 pounds. I'm not giving you the 275, but 274. And, and I had high blood pressure, borderline type 2 diabetes. And these are all choices that I made, basically to drink and then, eat a pound of pasta every night. And this stuff, those behaviors live in the shadows. And so, when we don't have the accountability, and I think part of it is accountability of community. It's like when you have no one and nowhere to show up to, and it's like you can devolve. And I remember thinking that, what about my best friend? I wish my best friends would call me and seriously just ask, "How you doing, man? How are you? Like, what's going on? I haven't seen you for a while. You're usually not this, isolated or whatever."
Now were the friends that you're referring to or thinking of, are
like,
those friends or are those drinking buddies?
I'm talking really good friends.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, who would be there whether I drink or whether I not,
okay.
Because I didn't feel like I needed to be a social drinker. I just knew that I wanted to drink. And so I didn't have the stigma that, well, if I drink at the bar, at least I'm being social, Now, I actually had set myself up. I would call it set myself up for success.
Very well planned out, strategic.
Yeah, like I might have a couple of beers or a glass of wine at a bar or something like that, but I would make sure that I kind of stayed under the legal limit so that I could hit the mini market on the way home and then get shit-faced.
Playing chess.
Yeah, that's called.
Yeah.
It's like I called it setting myself up for success, so I wouldn't make a bad decision and drink and drive, and put myself and others at risk.
It's kind of a responsible plan, I guess, when you approach it from that.
Yeah, but nevertheless, I was still drinking until I would pass out, or or I would say go to sleep, on the couch with my shoes on.
Watching a shitty documentary with a pound of pasta.
Half eaten.
But I'm still only weighing in at 274 3/4, so fuck
right,
off.
Yeah. So I think that to get back to community, it's been my point is that my good friends were not asking me, like, "Hey, how are you? Where have you been? How are things really?" And it wasn't until I found more community in the yoga community that was more focused around health, and fitness and showing up and developing a regular practice that those things became more real to me.
Yeah. One of the things I think it's important, surrounding community, and that kind of goes hand in hand with it, is service work. And man, I don't know if you knew this, but you have been really instrumental in me learning the importance of service work. So not only from a personal perspective, in building relationships and communities and getting to know other people and actually genuinely caring about what other people are doing in their lives and, both personally and professionally. But when we get on a professional side of that, whether it's in the corporate world or the podcasting world or at a grocery store world, wherever the hell it is, that service, that genuine giving back and showing interest and really caring about people, man, you've been really a great example of that to me and to many other people out there too. I'd like to kind of hear your take on that, where that comes from. Was that something that, like, have you always been like that, like as a kid growing up, or is that something that's been a learned thing over time? What are your thoughts on that?
I think that number one, I had a good role model in that. And my dad has always been somebody who has been dedicated to service. Mm-hmm. And for many years, I was involved in an organization called Rotary International. And their motto is service above self. But I was always kind of just a helpful person, growing up, my first jobs were, first jobs outside of like a paper route were, waiting tables. And I think I was a busboy before I was a waiter. And so you kind of anticipate needs, so it teaches you to give more. Of course, I was in the military. We call that service.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, sir, by the way.
Yeah. And so I think it's just part of my DNA, but I think it's certainly something that you can cultivate, something that we always have is the ability to either lend a hand up or, reach down, pull somebody up, or reach up and hold somebody up. And it really doesn't take much to just be a general cheerleader. And I got that through one of my teachers through yoga, who has been tremendously helpful in saying, whatever it is your goal, let me know and I'll help you. And it doesn't matter what it is. I mean, she might not even have any skills. But for example, earlier this summer, I was trying to run a 5K race and go for my best time. And she's a hell of a lot faster than me because she's a professional athlete. And she says, well, I'm going to cruise today. Would you like me to pace you to your best time ever? And she actually ran the whole race, right with me and said, okay, this is where you do, she's just conversational the whole time. I'm kind of second wind.
But she could have smoked you at any time.
Yeah. And she ran the whole run with me, and it was just like one of those things. And I couldn't believe that somebody would actually do that and put out so much effort. It wasn't her max effort, but, she did that for me. And I was just like, wow, that was just really beautiful. I was moved to tears, and the other thing that service work does is it puts you in a position where you want to show up as your best. When you're committed to being somewhere or doing something in a role of service, you typically show up in your better self.
Yeah, and I think to add to that too, service can get us out of our own heads. So maybe we're stuck in, there's a certain thing going on that we're really struggling with. This was just again pointed out to me yesterday by a friend. When we can take that same thing that we're struggling with and help somebody else out, if it's with, something similar that we're struggling with, even better. But just in general, that will help us, just like you said, number one, show up your best because you're getting out of your own way, your own head. And then you get to give back to someone. And that's going to help in that process to grow and to get to know ourselves better. And then, the greatest thing, the obvious thing is that you're providing service to somebody else. In life in general, I think that's such a huge part in life. And really personally, like from my perspective, I think that's what life is about. Now, am I an expert at it? Absolutely not. I really just learned this in the last, couple of years maybe, or at least had an idea of it. Man, I really didn't give, two shits for a long time, about what anyone else was doing, or I was so focused on myself. But let's kind of transition because I'm babbling here. Recently you quit drinking again. Okay. And that's actually right around the time you and I kind of started to get to know each other a bit.
Right.
Take us back, to that, and what kind of led up to that, and how's that going for you, man?
It's been going a lot better. The real instigator was, I think, Larry, Larry Hagner, who's been on your show. And he was on your show after, I think, his 100 days or so of sobriety. And that was a big inspiration to me. And on the one hand, there's the vanity aspect of it. When you stop taking in, dead calories and eating poorly, you can really change your health and fitness in a rapid way. Yeah. So part of it was that. And again, I was looking at my life and saying, okay, so I've been drinking sometimes, sporadically, and I kind of classify myself as what I would call a problem drinker versus a full-blown alcoholic. What if my question was, am I showing up as my best self?
Yeah.
And if the answer is no, what's holding me back, and why am I not executing on my goals or my dreams? And if it's because, do you deserve to have a glass of wine after a hard day of work? Sure. But is that really working out for you? Is it affecting you in other ways? And you might work really hard. And the answer is yes, you do deserve that beer, and it's not hurting anybody. except it's hurting you in showing up for your goals and having the energy and the focus to do what you think you are, what you want to do.
Yeah. Or what you're capable of doing too.
Right. Yeah.
Living up to your full potential.
Right. Yeah. So, and I was looking back through my life, I think it gave me some inflection point to, say a couple years earlier, I think I had my bottom moment. And I remember thinking, as I was going through this, I was between jobs and not super hurting for money or anything like that. But I'd spent the afternoon. It was probably a Saturday afternoon, and I'd started, I don't know why, but I thought I would start with a glass of wine at like 11 o'clock. And I was trying to do some sort of work because I had my computer with me. And then I ended up at a brewery and having a couple more beers. And then I went and got some food. And then I went to another restaurant to have another drink or beer. And, the next thing I know, I wake up the next morning and all my shit's gone.
Oh, what?
And I'm like, wait a second. Wait, I don't have my wallet. No. I don't have, I've got my car keys, but my car's not here. And I don't have my my computer, my backpack or shoulder bag that had the computer in it. And I'm like, what the fuck? My car's been stolen. Wait, my shit's been stolen. My life is on my laptop. And this is before I started my podcast, and I was just kind of enjoying life, and that's what I called it. And I tried to put everything together, and I prayed to Jesus, who I kind of don't really believe in all that much, but I said, Jesus, if you bring everything back to me, I swear I'm going to be allegiant to you, and the most dedicated person ever. So I figured out that that somebody had put me in an Uber and sent me home. So I had like an angel looking out after me. So I ran down 5 miles down to get my car, and I look at my car, and it had been trashed. It looked like, somebody had gone through it. There's receipts all over the place. Somebody had obviously broken into my car in the parking lot overnight and stolen my computer. But then I thought, well, and I don't have my wallet. So and I don't have my phone. That was the other thing too. So I somehow fire up my old laptop that had a cracked screen, and I looked for I did the Find My iPhone thing, and I traced it back to the last place I was, and I was like, okay, so my phone's here. It's definitely with security, and I go around asking the security at the area, they don't have it, and then I get and so I'm just like lost, and but still panicked. Anyway, so eventually I retraced my steps after getting my car. I find that my computer was left at the first place I started drinking, and then my wallet and keys eventually showed up later that afternoon when the last restaurant that I was at. I left them at the place where I'd gone to get some food, and so I settled my bill and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And then, of course, it was Sunday, and I was like, thank God this, I had this panic attack. And then I was like, well, then I started drinking again.
Immediately.
Sorry, Jesus.
I was just going to say, dude, you owe Jesus some mad props, and you got to get on that train now because he saved your ass. That's so funny, dude. But, what's even like, did you equate the alcohol to all those issues? I mean, obviously it probably sounds like you didn't, because you started drinking again, to keep
well, I did, obviously. I think I did, obviously.
Subconsciously, maybe, but you're not, it's not like oh man, this is why, you're not, almost like the perception versus reality of it, I guess.
Yeah. But I think at that point I didn't care. And I didn't have the, the accountability and the network that I have now. And so you mentioned service earlier. And one of the things that I've done, and I think this is, an important tip for people is if you're a drinker and you find yourself in a pattern that you don't want to repeat, is set up a system to break it. And so now, for example, I teach yoga on weekends. And that's really important to me. And I do it as a volunteer. We offer like a reduced price class for the community. And I do it because I want to be of service, but I also have that accountability to show up sober and presently for the students that show up to the class.
Yeah.
So it's like, and what do you mean? You give up part of your day, for no pay to teach. And absolutely. Because it creates accountability and community, and it keeps me honest. It's like if I don't have that, I feel like I'm at a higher degree of risk for choosing to do a bad behavior because it doesn't matter.
Yeah, so it's such a great point, man. It really is. And like the person out there thinking like, well, what? I'm not getting paid for it. Well, why? Why would I want? And those are those selfish kind of box thinking that we can get into. I know I was in that for a long time. Whereas we're not looking at the full scope of it. I mean, you're like you mentioned, accountability, service. You're showing up your best because you're not willing to number one, let other people down, but not let yourself down also.
So in that same vein, I want to share another tip that really kind of changed the way that that I got, that I got sober. And for me, it was like changing a habit and a pattern. So it used to be that after a stressful long day at work, I would go down to a winery or, go grab a beer right after work on my way home. And what I did was I changed that behavior instead of, because I knew exactly where this was going. Like I would go get a glass or two of wine and then stop at a certain mini market where the clerk was super friendly. And then I'd buy a 6-pack and then come home and drink it until I fell asleep. And so what I did was I changed that pattern. Instead of going home or going to a bar or a winery or whatever, I changed that pattern to go straight to a yoga class right on my way home from work. And that became really like my baseline practice. And then after, yoga or hot yoga, the last thing you really want to do is drink. You just want to rehydrate, with water and electrolytes, and then have something simple and light for dinner. And so that was the pattern that set me on the pace for, losing that 50 pounds. It was yoga as a baseline practice, but interrupting that thing and saying, okay, what's working for me? Okay, and this is not working for me, going to the bar and then stopping at a mini market. So I need to interrupt that pattern and create a habit that will, there's no thought about it. It's just what I do.
Yeah. Well, that's that self-advocacy too. You kind of know yourself, and thankfully you were able to come to terms with that. Like these patterns, those are huge. And when we can break those patterns, that can help get us out of that cycle that we're stuck in. Let's talk a little bit. We got a few minutes left, David. I want to respect your time. Let's talk about davidrachford.com. We've already, I've touched on one of my, favorite things about you, about getting to know you, about our friendship is obviously your service work. Tell us a little bit about davidrachford.com and how can you help anyone out there listening who might want to chat or reach out to you or find some more information about any of the challenges that you're working on today?
Yeah, so there's a couple things. One, I do run a Facebook group called the Better Human Challenge, and it's facebook.com/Better Human Challenge. And at davidrachford.com, I do have a podcast, and it's called the Better Human Challenge Show. And so we're just about, as we're recording this, we're just about at the 1 year mark on the show. And so it's an interview format where I have short episodes which focus on a challenge or a task or something that we can do to improve our lives. And then a longer show, which is a weekly interview, and we talk sometimes sobriety, we talk sometimes about personal development, and sometimes just about life in general. And it's been a lot of fun to put those shows together and also connect with guests and use that as a platform to connect other people with guests and be of service.
Yeah. Speaking of that, that's one thing I couldn't get over, man. Real quick is I just thought it was so cool. Like I barely knew you, and you're like, "Oh yeah, I know Rich Roll. Yeah, I'll hit him up for you." I'm like, "What? All right, cool, dude. Like, thanks."
Yeah, and you had him on the show, and it was great.
And I did, and that's really a great example, I think, right there of like, go. I mean, you didn't have to do that. We didn't know each other great. Like we both knew we were cool guys, and we had talked a little bit. Those are those things of stepping out and going the extra mile for others that really. Not only do they benefit, the person and the community and as a whole, but you get that feeling of just being there and being able to connect folks and provide service to others too, man. So just super cool stuff, man. Well, hey, thanks for coming on today, man. It's always great to talk to you. I'm sure we'll be on our weekly call here shortly, and we'll be talking about some other stuff, huh?
Yeah, and we're gonna have to do another show, another follow up, because I didn't get to share the hitting bottom story.
Let's do it. You want to share the hitting bottom story? We don't have to stop right there. We can do whatever we want.
All right, yeah. So this is when I was in the Navy, and this isn't my hitting bottom story, but it's a damn funny story, man. And there's this guy in my division named Kevin, and we were Kevin. I don't want to say his last name because he's hopefully still alive. Yeah. But he was a very funny individual. And so we were all, 19, 20, 21. That's kind of the average age of somebody in the military. But he was 28. And he says, man, he comes in looking late and looking like he just had, jumped on the wrinkle bomb, and he was just always just a mess. And he comes in and he's like, fuck, man, I think I hit bottom last night. And he had this big gravelly voice, and he's like, I think I hit bottom last night. And we're like, yeah, really? What happened, Kevin? What happened? He's like, dude, I hit bottom. I don't know if I should tell you. Like, come on, Kevin, tell us. He's like, dude, I think I hit bottom. Well, let me tell you the story and you tell me if you think I could go lower. and I'm like, yeah, okay, this sounds good, And he's like, all right, so it's Wednesday night. We don't get paid until Friday. I'm broke, and this is up in the Bay Area. He's like, and Wednesday is all you can eat, and pizza and $3 pitchers at Mountain Mike's. I guess that's a pizzeria.
Yeah, I have one right across the street from my house, bro.
Mountain Mike's. So he's like, it was $3 pitchers at Mountain Mike's. He's like, and I'm broke. I got absolutely no money. I'm hungry. I'm a loser. I want to get drunk, but I got no money. So I walked down to Mountain Mike's, and I'd wait for somebody to get up from their table and like, hey, you done with that? And, there's still 2 slices there. And they'd be like, yeah, we're leaving. He's like, you mind if I take it? and then he starts drinking their beer or whatever's left over in their $3 pitcher. Yeah. And then like if he sees somebody get up and go to the bathroom, he would like just kind of ghost by and grab their beer and start pounding their beer. And he's like, so I'm in this routine, like for about an hour and a half, eating pizza, drinking leftover beer. And now he's like, now I'm fucking drunk and full, and I got to walk home to my mom's house. I'm 28 years old. I just freeloaded on pizza and beer at Mountain Mike's. And now I got to walk home and, go to my mom's house. Yeah. And he's like, I'm feeling like a fucking loser. And, I get about halfway home and I got this gas building up, and so like I kind of stop and try to squeeze out a fart and I shit my pants. And I'm wearing sweats with elastic around the ankles. I'm sorry, bro. So this turd is just rattling around, at his foot, and he's like, and so he walks home and he's like, and then I got to go by my mom's room to throw these sweats in the laundry. And she yells, Kevin, is that you? Yeah, Mom. What's that smell? Nothing, Mom. Just stepped in some dog shit. And he throws it in there, turd and all. And he's like, and then I got to come here and show up with you assholes. Like, I don't know. I think I hit bottom.
Dude.
He's like, I think I hit bottom. Do you think I could go lower? And we all had this big debate about, yeah, I think if you really apply yourself, you can definitely go lower, Kevin.
Dude, that's got to be one of the most demeaning. So not only did you just freeload at a Mountain Mike's, and
this isn't me. This is Kevin.
Yes, no, I got it, Kevin. You should get in touch with Kevin and see whatever the hell happened. Maybe,
I know.
I wonder if he has his own place now.
Still living. He's like 48 years old, still living at home with my mom.
Kevin, what's that smell, dude? That's comedy, man. Well, I think that's a great bottom story, and I gotta say, I think that's probably one of the best ways we've ever ended the show, with a story of that that involves beer, pizza, shit, living at home with mom, and sweatpants with elastic around the ankles. You gotta love that too.
Yeah, you got to. But yeah, so let that be, a story. Bottom is wherever the hell you decide to get off, man. Yeah. And you don't have to take it that far.
Definitely not, man. I love it, man. Well, hey, thank you again for coming on today, man. Folks, check out davidrachford.com, and we'll talk soon.
All right, thanks, Dave.